Imagine that you're on trial for your life. The evidence is thin and the witnesses are shaky, and you're starting to think you might actually walk free. Then the prosecution calls the star witness, a man who sat in a cell right next to yours, a man who says that you confessed to him. The jury believes him, and you're sent away for life.
Me?
No, not you.
I was gonna say, I don't remember confessing to anything.
That's the point.
That's not reassuring.
But there's a problem. You've never met this man. In fact, you've never even been in the same room. His name is Leslie Vernon White, and in the 1980s, he turned the Los Angeles justice system into his own personal ATM. From inside a maximum security jail using nothing but a shared telephone and a silver tongue, he tricked detectives and examiners and even the district attorney into handing him the keys to nearly every case in the city. He didn't just lie for a living. He built a culture of perjury that put hundreds of people behind bars on nothing more than a wink and a nod. I'm Jess, and this is Private Eye Cortex, and you're watching The Mind on Trial. Today, we're looking at the man who showed the world exactly how easy it is to trade a lie for a life. No recording, no written statement, no one else heard it, just him.
No.
Yep. And everyone believed him anyway. Jailhouse informant cases leave us guessing. Was the testimony real? Was it exaggerated? Or was it completely fabricated? But every once in a while, a case appears that removes the guesswork. Because the person at the center of it, he explains exactly what they were doing. But this case isn't just about whether informants lie. We've already covered that in our first episode. It's about how someone figured out exactly how to make a lie believable and use that knowledge over and over again. His name was Leslie Vernon White, and what makes his story different is not just what he did, it's how deliberately he did it and how he shared with the public on national television exactly how he did it again and again. And worse, he says he's not the only one. By the late 1980s, his claims became so extreme that they triggered a formal investigation in Los Angeles County.
Subject identified, Leslie Vernon White. Classification, jailhouse informant. Behavioral pattern detected. Repeated testimony involving alleged inmate confessions. Operational outcome, accepted as credible witness in multiple criminal proceedings.
So, another man who just happens to overhear a suspicious number of confessions.
No, something more precise, something more calculated, more dangerous than that. White wasn't relying on coincidence. He was studying the system. He noticed patterns, what investigators responded to, and what prosecutors valued. And he had another advantage. Despite being a criminal with a history of drug offenses and robbery and kidnapping, the New York Times described him as an articulate man of considerable charm. And that mattered, because that charm is what allowed him to manipulate seasoned detectives and medical examiners over the phone, often pulling non-public case details out of them in minutes. didn't sound like what people expected a dangerous criminal to sound like. He sounded like someone they trusted, convincing enough to get professionals on the phone and have them hand over details they never should have shared. And once he understood those patterns, he stopped observing them and started using them. According to reporting at the time, he literally picked up a phone and showed authorities how he could fabricate a confession. In one instance, he claimed a suspect confessed to him in the back of a police car at a time when there was almost no physical evidence tying the suspect to the crime. Here's how it worked. He didn't need a real confession. He built one. He engineered it. And sometimes he didn't just fabricate the confession. He fabricated the opportunity for that confession to happen. He would impersonate someone with authority and arrange transportation records that placed him near a target inmate. On paper, it looked like proximity, a bus ride, a holding cell, a shared transfer. He would call the jail's bailiff, pose as a deputy district attorney, and order that he and a target inmate be transferred to court at the same time. This created official records showing they were on the same bus or in the same holding cell, providing proof for when the confession supposedly happened. To a jury, that looks like evidence that they had access to each other. In reality, it could be completely manufactured. He gathered information, sometimes directly from the very cases that he would later testify about. From newspapers, from conversations from other inmates, fragments, pieces, details. Sometimes, even by calling law enforcement directly, posing as someone with authority to obtain case details. Then, he assembled those pieces into a narrative, not just any narrative, one that sounded like something only the perpetrator would know. Because specificity is what convinces people something is real. And here's the part that doesn't get said out loud. The system doesn't just allow this, it quietly incentivizes it. Because when someone is sitting in jail, facing years, sometimes decades behind bars, even the possibility of reduced time becomes a powerful reason to say whatever the system needs to hear.
Behavioral pattern identified. Information synthesis. Process. Combine publicly available data with inferred narrative elements. Result. Testimony perceived as credible due to specificity. Confidence level high.
He's not solving crimes. He's reverse engineering belief.
You got it. In a courtroom, jurors aren't analyzing evidence the way that investigators do. They're asking something simpler. Does this feel real? And highly specific details, timing, location, small descriptive elements, they create the illusion of truth. Jurors think, how else could he have known such intimate details unless the defendant confessed to him?
Cognitive response detected. Increased perceived credibility with higher detail density. Inference. Believability exceeds verification.
So accuracy is optional, but persuasion is mandatory.
In many cases, yes. This wasn't speculation. Eventually, Leslie Vernon White admitted what he had been doing. Now, you might think a guy like Leslie would keep his head down and enjoy his rewards. But Leslie Vernon White wasn't just a liar. He was a loose cannon. After being released on furlough, Leslie didn't exactly go to the library. He allegedly beat his wife, snatched a woman's purse, and even pulled a knife on his landlady. But here's the kicker. When he got hauled back to jail, Leslie realized the authorities weren't going to bail him out this time. He was frustrated. He felt the system he'd built wasn't respecting him anymore. And so He decided to do the one thing no one expected. Leslie Vernon White decided to inform on the biggest criminal he knew, the informant system. He didn't just snitch on himself, he did more than that. He called the Los Angeles Times and the sheriff's department, and basically he said, "You think I'm a hero? I'm a fraud. I can prove that your entire legal system is a joke." He wasn't looking for redemption. He was looking to burn the whole house down just to show everyone how easily he'd picked the locks. He helped show the world just how easily he had been gaming the system. He had fabricated confessions, not impulsively, not accidentally, but systematically. He studied the system and gave it exactly what it responded to. In a 1980s interview with 60 Minutes, White admitted he frequently fabricated confessions to secure his own release. While he often cynically claimed that defendants he snitched on were guilty of something, he confessed he had no idea if they actually committed the specific crimes that he testified to, effectively admitting he was indifferent to whether his perjury sent innocent people to prison.
So he gets reduced sentence time, gets out, commits more crimes over and over, while innocent people get punished.
Exactly. And here's what makes it even more unsettling. In many cases, there isn't even a formal deal. No contract, no written agreement, just an understanding. According to the 1990 Los Angeles County Grand Jury report, the system tolerated suspected perjury. The investigation, which featured hundreds of witnesses and exhibits, revealed that in many cases there was no formal contract or written agreement. Instead, as special counsel Douglas Dalton famously described it, the process relied on a wink and a nod, a mutual unspoken understanding that the informant would be rewarded for their testimony later.
If it works when it's false, it was never designed to detect truth.
Bingo.
System response analysis. Input, fabricated testimony. Output, accepted as credible evidence. System vulnerability confirmed.
And that's what makes this case so important, because it forces a different question. Not why would someone lie? That part is obvious. What makes this even more complicated is that the system is supposed to protect against this. Prosecutors aren't just advocates. They're legally and ethically required to ensure fairness. Which raises a difficult question. If a system depends on testimony from people with powerful incentives to lie, who is responsible for making sure the truth survives that? What kind of system makes that lie effective? And what kind of system rewards it, believes it, and sometimes depends on it? Now, you're probably wondering, did Leslie just pick names out of a hat? Not a chance. Leslie Vernon White was a predator, and he hunted for the weak. He looked for the most vulnerable people in the system. He targeted inmates who couldn't defend themselves well or explain to a lawyer what was happening. He went after circumstantial cases, the ones where the police had some evidence, but they desperately needed a confession to close the deal. So he wasn't just a liar, he was a bully. He was picking on people who literally couldn't talk back. And it gets worse. Leslie didn't just go after the defendants, he went after his own colleagues. He was so competitive about getting rewards that he would compete with other informants to make sure he got the deal. To Leslie, it was just a business, a life for a paycheck, a life for a furlough. And as long as others in the world played along, the culture of perjury just kept on spinning. People least equipped to fight back were often the easiest to bury. The danger isn't just that someone like Leslie Vernon White existed, The danger is that he didn't need to be extraordinary. Now, if you're thinking this was just about low-level thieves or small-time dealers, think again. Leslie Vernon White was playing for the highest stakes possible. He testified in multiple major cases, including those involving notorious gang leaders and murder suspects, who were literally facing the death penalty. People were almost executed because of a guy who solved crimes in a short period of time with a jailhouse phone. According to the New York Times, defense lawyers compiled a list of hundreds of cases that were potentially tainted by Leslie and his colleagues, including cases involving defendants facing the death penalty. It was a major scandal. When Leslie finally went on 60 Minutes and showed the world how he'd manufactured evidence out of thin air, he didn't just expose a single lie. He exposed serious flaws in the Los Angeles justice system. The state was forced to re-examine many of those cases. That's the cost of a lie when institutions decide it sounds useful. He didn't need special access. He didn't need advanced skill. He only needed to understand one thing: what people believe and why. Why do jurors believe a criminal who has incentives from the prosecution to testify against a potentially innocent person? Because the brain isn't designed to detect the truth. It's designed to recognize a story. And when that story is detailed, coherent, and feels complete, it overrides doubt. So, did they fix it? Well, it took decades. California finally passed a law in 2011 that limits convictions based solely on uncorroborated jailhouse informant testimony. But hundreds of cases in the 80s may have been affected. The culture of perjury has already done its damage. Leslie Vernon White didn't just trade lies for freedom. He traded them for outcomes that could cost others their freedom and potentially their lives. Because in a system built on a wink and a nod, the truth is the first thing to get buried. Because in a courtroom, the most powerful evidence isn't always what's true. It's what feels undeniable. And sometimes those are not the same thing. I'm Jess.
Private Eye Cortex.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. This has been another episode of The Mind on Trial. And if you had fun or learned anything, do me a favor. Comment, like, subscribe, share. Do all this stuff. Since the algorithm is tricky, but with your help, we can beat it. Until next time, remember that social justice belongs to all of us. And with the right thinking and keeping our hearts in the right places, we can create change together.
Another case file closing tonight. Truth in the shadows bring it to light. Witnesses talking, stories unwind. Evidence tested inside the mind. Confessions whispered, deals on the side. Psychology shows what people might hide. Follow the science, question the file. Welcome back to Mind on Trial. Mind on Trial. Follow the clues, separate facts from courtroom views. Every Sunday we're back again, breaking down the truth within Mind on Trial. Step by step, evidence beats a wild suspect. Truth comes out after a while. That's the game on Mind on Trial. Jurors listening, weighing the tale. Memory bending when stories prevail. Bias lies and pressure shaping the scene. Not every confession means what it seems. Down in the pasture by the old fence line, Luna the donkey's keeping good time. Willie the goat thinks justice is style, cheering the cases on Mind on Trial. Mind on Trial. Follow the clues, separate facts from courtroom views. Every Sunday we're back again, breaking down the truth within Mind on Trial. Step by step, evidence beats a wild suspect. Truth comes out after a while. That's the game on Mind on Trial. And theories on the board tonight, brains and evidence shining the light. From the lab to the courtroom, we're chasing the truth on Mind on Trial. Mind on Trial, case by case, science helping truth keep pace. Every Sunday, stay a while, another mystery on Mind on Trial.